Hello, this is my submission for Castlevania Symphony of the Night, 80% no save corruption for Awesome Games Done Quick 2019. You're going to see me starting off the run, collecting exactly 41 hearts. That's the minimum requirement to start the run with a neutron bomb. The neutron bomb is going to be used for a skip later on, which allows us to skip skip death, which takes away our starting gear. There is a faster way to do the skip, but it's much more precise. Instead of using the neutron bomb, we would be using a Tetra Spirit spell, which would essentially do the same thing. We're using it to kill an enemy to collect a level up in a specific position, which will activate a reverse shift line glitch. And the reverse shift line glitch works where you scroll the screen by standing in a specific position and walking in that position by anywhere from 1 to 7 pixels, I believe, and you pause the screen while the screen is being scrolled, and you do that either with a level up, a heart refresh, or whatever means you need. And by doing so, you activate the glitch, which will underflow your X position the next time you enter screen transition. So you're going to see it coming up here, which we use to, since it underflows your X position, it skips an entire screen, and it'll skip the screen where death is waiting to take your equipment away, essentially. But yeah, the only reason that this method loses time over the Summon Spirit or the Tetra Spirit method, the Tetra Spirit method is slower RTA, but it's faster for in-game time in a way. Or I forget it, I'm saying it kind of backwards, but essentially because I'm opening these menus and the menus don't progress the in-game timer, I'm going to be losing time later on, because this entire first section of the game, almost the entire first half of the game, is on a global timer. We call it the clock rush. So there's going to be a room coming up that opens and closes. It's a little statue on every other minute. And on even minutes it's open, and on odd minutes it's closed. So using the spell would have you never having to open the menu in the first place. Therefore, real time and in-game time would essentially be synced up. Whereas here, my in-game time is about 1 second slower than real time, so I've lost 1 whole second of real time because we're waiting for the same in-game timer once that cycle is over. But that version of the skip is much more consistent. So for doing resets or doing a no reset / marathon setting, you're not going to want to go for that Summon Spirit version, since it only saves 1 second. We're coming up on the first boss fight here. Depending on whether you get a double kill or not, I did not get the double kill. You could tell if you get the double kill based on there's like a little shiny white diamond type animation during the level up. And if you have 2 of those, that means you killed them, the boss on the same exact frame, both bosses on the same frame, versus if there's a different animation for one boss versus the other, they weren't killed on the same frame. And that just determines what enemies I'm going to be killing during the clock rush, because the only way to really save time during this section is to kill specific enemies to set up your level ups for the later part of the game. The experience route for 80% is very well routed out, and we know exactly when we're going to get level ups and on exactly which bosses, which enemies. Most of the time you want them on bosses, because when you kill a boss, it gives you a lot of experience and it stacks multiple level ups in one animation. So you want to basically stack all your level ups on bosses or enemies that give large amounts of experience when possible. During the clock rush, it doesn't really matter, because there really isn't any time to be saved so long as we make that cycle. You technically could beat the cycle, possibly. It might be humanly possible to beat the cycle from just optimizing your movement as much as possible to save an entire minute on your movement within the first 8 minutes of the game, but it hasn't been done, and there's no... I don't think it would be viable in an RTA run without perfect execution and perfect luck. Coming up here, I made a little bit of mistake. It doesn't really lose me time, but if I did get the double kill, you would be seeing me kill these enemies. But I realized a little bit later that I didn't get the double kill, so I jump over them and skip them. That's one of the differences in the route, whether you get the kill or not. I believe this run is a little bit older, so I'm using an older version of the experience route, which has me losing a little bit of time later in the Coliseum, which is a section where you could actually be saving time. It's a more recent discovery, but this is about a year old, so I don't do it here. Coming up here is the Doppelganger boss. I have the stopwatch sub-weapon. The Doppelganger boss is the only boss that you see in this run that can be affected by the stopwatch. He just sits there and lets you kill him. But yeah, that's like the only real reason we get the stopwatch. You see me jumping over that weapon there to have my menu set up in a specific way. So one of the ways, because this run is so short, that you really do want to save time on is like what inputs you're pressing for the menus and making sure your menus are set up in a way that you're used to. Skipping that item helps keep your menus from being cluttered, because unnecessary item drops will add to the amount of like extra movement you have to do for your menus. Here I'm reloading the room, and ooh, I got the little floor clip. That's cool. That's frame perfect, and it saves 1 second, but because it's in the clock rush, it doesn't really matter. You essentially land on the same frame that you go through the screen transition, and it like forces you under the floor, and it zips you downwards. Here, now that we have the wolf transformation, we can continue through the clock rush, but real quick, we're going to collect this garnet using the wolf's, when it's jumping up a slope and the wolf has some speed, you jump a lot higher than you would normally as Alucard, and we use that to our advantage in a couple of places. Mostly in the library after this, which in the library we're going to be doing a glitch known as the shop glitch. It's an underflow glitch where we're going to be equipping that garnet that we have just gotten as we're selling it. So it goes from trying to sell 1 to trying to sell 0, and then you sell 0 and it takes 1 away from 0 and it underflows all the way to 255. Then from doing so, we could sell as many as we need to get all the money that we need for the rest of the run. We're going to be doing it to buy a duplicator. The duplicator allows us to use items that normally are only able to be used once as many times as we want. So potions, mana prisms, buffalo stars, stuff like that. As you can see here, I'm just kind of collecting hearts, waiting for the clock door to open. But yeah. The duplicator is really great. We're going to be using a combination of mana prisms to restore our mana, because it costs mana to fly around as the bat, which we're going to get later, and buffalo stars to kill enemies and bosses quickly. So here I know exactly when this door is going to open, so I set myself up and do a little bit of a setup there to get in here as quickly as possible. The reason I'm losing time there is due to me not doing the faster version of the death skip, and that's the amount of time it loses over the fastest version. But when it comes to like no reset situations, you don't want to be going for that. So now we're finally in a place where time can be gained or lost. We are no longer on cycles. So first thing coming up in the Coliseum is we're going to be continuing that experience route. This is the older version of the experience route, but I go out of my way to kill this Blade Master here, and that sets my experience up for the rest of the route to, I think overall, that one kill saves like up to 3 level up animations, along with all of the other experience routing that happened earlier. So it saves close to 9 seconds compared to the amount of level ups you would be getting without, just by killing all the enemies that would normally get in your way. But yep, we're using all of our overpowered gear to just kill these guys quickly. There's a strat you could do to save like almost half a second, but it's random whether the strat works or not, because you need a very specific I think intelligence level for it to work. And the stats that you gain throughout the run are somewhat random. And you also have to not get any critical hits on the bosses as you set up that strat, but it's a pretty cool one. It's something that's not worth going for, though, unless you're willing to reset runs like crazy. Here I go for that book jump. That book jump can be pretty risky, so you jump up the slope as the wolf, and then you dive kick off the book to get enough height to get up to the fairy card, which is going to be used for the shop glitch. Sometimes the hitbox of the book is changing such that when you dive kick into it, you take damage and the book doesn't, and you don't jump off the book. So with the fairy card activated, she's going to start talking, and you cancel her talking by starting up this cutscene with the librarian here, and that enters the glitch state where you're able to actually open your menus while talking to the librarian and being in the librarian's menu, which isn't normally supposed to happen, and that's how we equip the garnet as we're about to sell it, which is something that you're not normally supposed to do. So with that, we transform into the wolf. The wolf is a little bit faster in specific sections. I don't know if I go for the full strat here. No, I don't. There's a faster strat here now where you maintain your wolf movement all the way through this next section, and it saves a little bit of time. It's also a little bit random whether you get the fastest pattern or not, because it requires you getting hit by a flea armor and him sending you to the left as opposed to sending you to the right, and that pattern's random. But yeah, with these Buffalo Stars, I'm going to be killing bosses much faster than with the Alucard sword alone. So here I'm going to be getting the Soul of Bat, and I'm going to be going for a floor clip using the wolf. So when the wolf is jumping into specific sloped terrain and you untransform, usually it's frame perfect. Here I'm using the map to help buffer that input, and I get it there. When you untransform on a specific frame jumping into a slope, it's usually pixel perfect and frame perfect, hence why we use the map to help buffer those inputs. But it lets you go out of bounds, and when you go out of bounds, it zips you downwards, and it lets me skip having to use a library card, which is a pretty slow animation, and like wing smash forward and back and forward through the library. Instead, you just get out in one quick movement. It usually saves anywhere from like 6 to like 9 seconds, depending on how fast your movement is in the library normally and how fast you get the wolf clip. So yeah, that's one of the more tricky optimizations that you get to do for the any percent route. You can do it in all bosses and a couple of the other categories as well, but yeah, it's usually riskier to do them in the longer categories since there's more tricks coming up in those categories. Here it's once we get to the outer castle keep, we're going to just get to the second castle as quick as possible. Here I set up my positioning to do like a pretty interesting set of movement there. It's really cool. I like it. Here we set our positioning such that we enter the room and all we have to do is dive kick down and then start throwing our Buffalo Stars to kill the boss as quick as possible. But yeah, the rest of the run is just going to be optimizing movement, and there's 2 more glitches that we're going to be really abusing. This is going to be the first of those 2. This is the Richter skip. Got it first try. It's a 2-frame window on a wolf jump to squeeze the wolf's hitbox through a trigger that normally happens when you enter this room, and it skips the game requiring you to have the holy glasses to save Richter. It just plays the cutscene outright. Here we're going to be abusing the fact that the wing smash going upwards is faster than flying upwards or Alucard just trying to jump himself. I don't have any other relics other than the basic movement and the 3 transformations that you get. So most of the time we're going to be just using the wing smash mechanics to get around, or just jumping and untransforming. So another interesting thing that you're going to see after this boss fight is if you're wing smashing upwards while on a slope, it preserves your vertical momentum, and we use that to, once there's no ceiling in the way, we fly up really, really fast, which normally you don't start flying that fast until you've already gained some speed. So it kind of saves your vertical speed for when the ceiling is no longer in the way. But here we're just kind of making a beeline to the end of the run, which is going to be the final 2 bosses, the Shaft fight and the Dracula fight. Normally you're required to collect 5 different relics from 5 different bosses. Medusa is one of those bosses, and if you were to wait around in that room after you kill her, she drops a relic for you to use for the end of the game. We skip it because we don't need it. We do another reverse shift line to go out of bounds and skip having to go into that room, or we skip the requirements to open up that room. We just go in from out of bounds. But yeah, this is pretty much the end of the game. This little zigzag room is pretty notorious for being like oddly difficult to get through. It's pretty awkward in whatever category you're doing to get through that room. But yeah, we're going to be getting to this specific setup right over here, this specific room. There's a good visual cue to check whether you get the reverse shift line or not. I got it there, so I'm walking forward while doing the heart refresh, and then I buffer a backdash out. I do it on that specific positioning, and then when I enter the room, it skips that room that was normally a save room and pushes me out of bounds. And then if I start wing smashing out of bounds, that was me slowly moving when I was out of bounds, is actually me wing smashing. For whatever reason, it slows you down. But yeah, you just fly out of bounds, and you end up in the last save room of the game, having skipped collecting any of those relics. And yeah, these are the last two bosses. We're just going to be flinging buffalo stars at them. I equip them on both hands, both left hand and right hand, because normally the buffalo star has a minimum of, or a maximum of 3 on the screen at once per hand. So you can maximize the amount of buffalo stars you can have on the screen at once by equipping them to both hands. So now I can do 3 on one hand and 3 on the other. So I can just mash back and forth between each hand, and I can have 6 on the screen at once. And it's quite a bit faster and allows you to actually kill the bosses like a whole like 10 seconds faster or something like that. It's pretty crazy, is the amount of DPS. Oh, I actually use the cross here. I don't know if it saves a whole lot of time. Overall, the entire cross spell does about the same amount of damage as 1 buffalo star, so it's pretty weak overall. But yeah, that's the run. That's any percent no save corruption. I guess I should note that save corruption is something that cannot be done on the Xbox 360 version of the game. It's only on the PlayStation 1 version and the PlayStation PSN version of the games. So this is technically the fastest version for the fastest version of the route for Xbox. But yeah, save corruption would essentially allow you to corrupt your save data and just like warp to the credits pretty early on. I think the run is like 10 minutes or something like that. Maybe less than that now, I don't know. But yeah, that run isn't really ran at all because you just go through menus and manipulate data around to warp to the credits. But yeah, thank you for your time, and yeah.